Welcome everybody to this conversation that I'm having this morning. My name's Jo. I'm the CEO for Community Pharmacy South Yorkshire, and with me today I've got Shami, who's been working with us over the last year and a bit, supporting practices and pharmacies with expanding their advanced services. Welcome, Shami. Thanks for having a chat with me this morning.
Hi, Jo. Thank you.
We're here to have a chat about just generally how pharmacies can work more closely with their GP practices to deliver advanced services like Pharmacy First and the contraception service. Let's just start off by thinking, why is it so important that pharmacies and GP practices work together, especially with some of these newer services that have been introduced?
Yeah, Jo, that's a great question. That's a great question to start off with. So I think it's crucial. It's about patients, it's about speeding up care, improving access for patients. It's also about system-wide thinking about the system and reducing GP workload. It really enhances trust and uses really supports efficient use of healthcare resources, and we know how scarce they are. So let's really optimize everything. So I think it's key. Collaboration is key.
Wonderful. And as you've been going out and about, and I know you've been doing this work for a lot of time now, what are some of the benefits that you've noticed when you see pharmacies and GPs collaborating really effectively together?
Yeah, so you certainly see quicker access for patients. I think that has come loud and clear and through. So it's almost central of everything we're thinking about. Patients really do see that benefit. It's almost a seamless experience. When it's running super well, it becomes seamless, and patients really appreciate how quickly they are seeing, as opposed to what they were being used to in lengthy waits, etc. Definitely, I've seen some capacity pressures being eased in GP practices. Now, that's not phenomenal because these numbers aren't huge, but there are enough GP practice saying it's making a difference. So that's a really useful, positive build. And I think the really smart thing that's coming through is building trust between community pharmacy and GP practices, and that trust is actually enabling some confidence for pharmacy to deliver even more services. I think certainly from a professional point of view, I think a lot of pharmacists are have a greater satisfaction, greater professional satisfaction, and I believe, for me, the end goal here is to build community trust. I think that's where we'll really win, and I think when the patient sees a joined up, coordinated healthcare system, I think it's perfect. At the moment, we've got some fragmented ones, and when we see the whole of it working properly, and there are many areas now working at that level, you see the patient benefit, and that's ultimately what we want to do.
Right, and it's good to hear that there are some examples out there where it's working really well. I know certainly from some of the conversations I've been having, not all pharmacy teams are at the same level of confidence with regards to working with GP practices, and some people might even feel a little bit nervous or avoid contacting them directly because they might have had a bad experience in the past, or they might just not feel quite confident in what they're offering. So when you hear that people might be feeling like that, or there's a bit of nervousness there about approaching GP practices, what do you think is going on? Why do you think that might be?
So I think it's stepping out your comfort zones obviously can be quite a bit nervous. I think time pressures are everybody's super busy, so time pressures on both sides, from practice as well as pharmacy, can be an issue that allows you then to avoid having the conversation. Sometimes I would even say there's a slight fear of rejection when you start having a conversation. So you're kind of thinking, am I going to get it right? Is this right? Is this wrong? So I think there's that. Sometimes it's purely just not knowing where to start as well. What is the right starting point for the conversation? But I think from my point of view, I think it's okay to feel those things. I don't think it's a bad thing. That those nerves tend to make you feel and think more thoroughly through what you're going to do. So I think a simple message from pharmacy that's really concise, really clear, always lands well. I always use my opening conversation with pretty much everyone. It's a real tried and trusted one, which is usually something like, thanks for making the time today. I know things are incredibly busy, and that's why I'm here. I wanted to talk about Pharmacy First, and that does several things. It kind of talks about the GP pain point straight away, i.e. their busyness, starts offering a benefit, and actually it's an invitation to start collaborating, and that's the starting point of building trust. So I think there's just a simple example of how it can feel daunting, but a really simple example of how you can actually make a difference fairly quickly.
Yeah. And I know certainly GP practices, like you say, are really super busy, as are pharmacies as well. So, but if you're going to communicate with them, giving them something that's got a real clear message and it's concise is the best way to do that. If sort of somebody's watching this and they're maybe thinking, right, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go out there, put myself out there in a vulnerable position. I've not had much contact with a local practice. What would be your advice about the best way to start that?
So I think an informal introduction is always the best way. I think it's rather than making anything too formal. I think people appreciate an informal, quick chat. There's many ways we can do this, and I think it'll always lend itself to what the person feels comfortable in doing in their particular situation. But just talking slightly generically, I think I would always talk about. Well, first thing I'd always say is be very curious about the other person's agenda, because you never know how busy a day they're having. So I think it's always in front of mind to make sure you're aware of that, and it's not just your agenda that's going to be talked about. The person I would always kind of trying to aim to talk to, and it's not exclusive to them, to the practice manager is probably the best person to meet initially, but there's many other people. There's a reception lead, there's a clinical lead, and it goes on. There's a GP, but I think the initial informal introduction is really to start building a bit of a relationship. It's a friendly conversation. I always quite like an email. It kind of softens what we're trying to do straight away. It's quick, it's concise, it's not asking too much. And I think from my experience, practice teams always value clarity and brevity. I think that's two things that make it really, because everyone's super busy, and actually probably supports us to deliver a really clear message in a simple way. I always like to emphasize what's in their world, i.e. what's I know examples like appointment demand, prescription queries, etc. So for me, I always kind of look at it's more of a pilot and approved technique. Start small, build confidence, and that will then allow you to have some confidence to start building upon it. Offer yourself up. I think with the onset of ours, there's a lot of pharmacists that work in practices, and I think that's really improved confidence of what community pharmacy can do. So I think offer to attend practice meetings, team huddles, training days. I know everything's time precious, but these are simple tips where building that collaborative relationship will really start paying through. I think that's really, really, but all the way through, I'd always say start there, be concise, and always follow up on your messages. So if you're planning to do something, make sure you follow up on that too.
Yeah, great advice in there. And certainly something that I've heard as I've been talking to other people who have really taken off with delivering advanced services, going to weekly quick practice huddle meetings and things, just being visible and being recognised by the team, so important. But there'll be people who have tried it and maybe haven't had such a good experience. And I know certainly over my career, I can think back and think of some shocking meetings and encounters I've had when I worked in general practice for a while. What would your suggestion be to people to say, how do they handle it if a practice seems too busy or they're just not interested, they're quite dismissive?
So I think it's incumbent upon us just to make sure we have real empathy about their situation. And I think if we lead with empathy, I think it always makes a difference. Acknowledging their workload, for example, offering ultra low next steps. I think that's a really, really important thing. A 2-minute phone call, a summary one pager, with very few words, but really pertinent to what you're trying to get to is the key. I think the key quick wins would really be around make it easy for them. It's about sending eligible patients to you, and we'll do the rest. And that's one sentence. It's really quick. So there's usually pushbacks from practices for various reasons, but I think you kind of covered it. Where you become known and you've started making a relationship, they start building a bit of trust around what you're saying. And I think I'll probably add in, sharing some local patient success stories in a timely fashion. I think that again builds a bit of trust and stops some of the pushbacks. I would always adapt a face-to-face if it's ideal, but I'd probably avoid telephone call options. That's usually the most tricky one. But always follow up with a concise email summarising. It's really short. And you might think it's not registered, but it always does. And at the right time, they'll realise that they need to come back to you for that information.
Yeah. And I think it's that thing, isn't it? It's the starting off of a relationship and establishing that trust. And then you need to think about how you're going to maintain it. Certainly, some things that I've heard anecdotally from some GPs has been, oh, well, we've heard the pharmacy come in, but it always sounds like they're selling themselves. It's a bit of a hard sell. What would your advice be to anybody going into a practice to say, how do you sort of get the message across that we're competent, we're ready, we want to support without having that hard sell perception?
Yeah, I've probably come across less and less, because I think the services, particularly, well, both the services I predominantly talk about, Pharmacy First and the contraception service, have matured, and now it's many months since those early days. So I think the level of understanding is a lot higher. I think when I'm it's not really a hard sell anymore. It's more about the operational processes that's going to realize the benefits. So I think, firstly, I'd always go back to, make sure you deliver on your promises. And I always think about under promising, over delivering. I think that's always a great foundation. Examples, I'll email you that information, make sure you do it on time. I think it's about the patient, and it's about the practice in how I would approach it. So I'd talk about the benefits to the patient, I would talk about the benefits to the practice, the time saving and potentially some of those pressures they have with appointments. So I think that really is helpful. I think also, I think you brought that up, it's a formal sell if you only turn up once and try and sell them something. But if you've spent a bit of time popping in, getting to know them a little bit, when there's a prescription query or there's something, just saying hello to somebody there, I think that level of familiarity changes the dial somewhat. And then when you start celebrating milestones, excuse me, around the helping the surgery understand some of the wins, positive patient feedback, the numbers that they're referring, all those things make a difference. And I think maintaining sort of that light touch, but regular touch points is kind of the way I would do it. And I think also, I think it's really important just to make sure that you're available when and if they require you to attend any meetings. I think that can be quite challenging for community pharmacy, but if they can make that happen, I think that level of practice awareness is really key.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, but accept that the way our sector is established and the requirements, etc., make it difficult for people to leave. However, putting in that little bit of extra effort to get yourself noticed in the practice is a good thing. So from your work that you've been doing then, and without sharing and naming any names or identifying any parties involved, I wonder, just to help sort of inspire people out there, could you tell us about a success story that you've become aware of where you've seen that collaboration between pharmacy and GP practice make a real difference to the community and both parties?
Yeah, so there's actually a number of examples around Pharmacy First, but I'm going to swap this around a little bit, because I'm thinking of a practice that probably didn't believe too much in Pharmacy First when it first launched, and for various reasons. However, when the conversation started around the contraception service, that they had a workforce issue within the practice around the availability of people to do the annual reviews. And once we started talking about potential solutions with the 3 local community pharmacies, they realised that they can start doing and referring patients to pharmacy. Now, suddenly it turned their thinking about are we trying to sell them something as opposed to here's a solution for them, and of being solution orientated and pivoting from pharmacy first to PCS was an absolute winner for the local pharmacy, because suddenly they saw lots of maintenance patients coming over to them. But at the same time, what it did do, i.e. it built the relationship, it allowed Pharmacy First to come back onto the agenda with the subsequent meeting, and they agreed to trial it in small numbers. They said, look, when we're going to pick one of the conditions, which was UTIs at the time, and we'll start referring, and they started referring only probably about 3 or 4 in the first opening weeks, but it was only about, I think it was about 8 to 10 weeks later, in a more formal meeting, we went through all of the 7 clinical pathways, and subsequently they adopted referring to pharmacy. Pharmacy really great, because they were feeding back when maybe an inappropriate referral was made, but it was always used as a learning tool, so it was brilliant. And they went from doing 2s and 3s to doing circa about 30 to 40 now a month. So a great, not phenomenal numbers, but what I would say, it's a dial change straight away, and it just puts pharmacy front and center of what we can showcase.
Yeah, great, and great to hear that, because obviously that brings about benefits for both the pharmacy, helping them to hit their quota for the Pharmacy First, but also the practice in terms of increasing the appointment availability, and ultimately for the people that both practice and pharmacy serve in the community, because they're getting appropriate assessment at a time that's real for them. Yeah,
absolutely.
So what would your sort of top tips be? So if say Joe here, I'm new to an area and I'm not so confident in delivering these services, and I don't know if I feel confident enough to go in and contact the GP practice. Shami, what top tips could you give me to just help develop that confidence?
Yeah, I think again, I think it's unique to people, but the first thing I would always go back to is firstly know your value as a pharmacist. I think we are clinical experts in medicines and minor ailments. We are offering solutions, and we just need permission to help, really. So therefore it's a really simple elevator pitch. I put it as I would always be concise, be prepared. I would I'll be able to articulate, and I shared an example earlier on. It's that initial elevator pitch that buys people in. What we're not trying to do is sell a service. What we're trying to do is collaborate to enable a change in how we look after the community. I would always focus on patient benefit. I would always start small and then build. The small, tiny wins will build the confidence to allow you to start winning. I think we shared the one around being visible, introducing yourself, make sure people know your face. I think that's really, really important. And lastly, I would say, remember you're a part of the team. GPs, nurses, pharmacists all have the same goals: patient care, and being an equal collaborator within that ecosystem is where pharmacy, has a rightful place.
Yeah, no, great, and some very practical tips in there for people to take away. So I hope that this conversation between me and you, we've had this conversation a number of times. We decided to record it thinking that hopefully it will add some value out there for some people, because really the key messages are that building trust takes time. It's about establishing those relationships, but the small actions that you can take day to day, both pharmacist, pharmacy technician, the wider pharmacy team, can make a big difference as to how those relationships grow and blossom. Collaboration's a real positive thing. It helps everybody, pharmacies and GP practices, but ultimately patients and the communities we serve. And I think there's something in there that we'll look to just put an offer on. We'll do a bank of phrases, like little lift pitch starters for people. So we'll host those on the website too, so people can download those and take those away. But really, thank you, Shami, for for letting me record this conversation. I know we've had it a few times. I hope it gives value to some people. Please, our encouragement would be just start small, pick one GP practice, reach out this week, just start having conversations. And thank you for everybody for watching. If you want to share your experiences, let us know how things go. Please reach out to us at Community Pharmacy South Yorkshire. You can contact us via info@cpsy.org.uk. Shami, thanks for your time. Good to talk to you as always.
Yeah, thank you.